Are we here? Are we ready? We're going to see if I check. I was just catching the end of this Carl Jobs video. streaming, just streaming. There's a few things I want to get back into the debate, which, it's. All right. I think we're back. We're lagging, laggity lags. Um, so buttons. This is going to be. All right, I'm just. If you want to watch, we are having connection problems. We are having connection problems.
Play that is just impossible for a player of his strength. On the C Squared podcast, one of the greatest chess players of all time, Fabiano Caruana, said that the moves Dr. Lupo played in Game 1 were already enough to tell him he was cheating.
In this position for someone who is not, maybe like 1800 plus to play rook b4. I just don't think you can't randomly, even this one move, you cannot randomly come upon.
All right, I'm happy with that. All right. So, guess what? Somebody made a musical of the debate we're watching. Now, I'm not sure if he's taking material from all throughout the debate, I imagine, because the debate's 5 hours long. I'm sure this will include some parts within the first 2 hours, hopefully. Because that part of the debate we're very well we're well familiar with. Now, in addition, I wanted to talk about a couple other things going on in the world. The ship that is currently in the Mediterranean Sea, that is crewed by a bunch of activists carrying food and medical supplies, with the intention to go to Gaza, and deliver aid and open up a pathway for hopefully fleets of trucks with aid, of boats with aid, and ships. So let me pull this up on this page here. The flotilla. The Freedom Flotilla is on its way to Gaza as critics call for ship to sink. Critics. What are they critical of? A former judge from the International Court of Justice calls Israel's self-defense claim around flotilla nonsense. Israel claims they're acting in self-defense by blocking this boat. In order to justify action in self-defense, Israel has to satisfy the international community that it has been subjected to an attack. And one can hardly describe the delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza as an attack, he said in an interview with the FFC, Freedom Flotilla Coalition. Dugard continued that the state of Palestine has exclusive territorial rights over its territorial sea, and the activists, by providing aid to Gaza, are simply carrying out the obligation of the United Kingdom, whose flag it flies, to prevent the commission of a crime of genocide. Hmm. According to your laws, we have an obligation to prevent the commission of a crime of genocide. So anyway, we're keeping an eye on this. They're currently out in sea. I think there's a way to do the live tracker of precisely where it is. Ship's location is being monitored live by forensic architecture and using a Garmin live tracker on board. So this is Madeleine Tracker. Don't lose the Madeleine. Track her journey for safety, accountability, and solidarity. Ooh, okay. So they are... I got a map on another window here that has all the labels. Let me just find that. Because this is Greece right here. And to the south is... Let's see. They are about... Okay, they're like next to Libya. This, I think, is this line here. This is Libya, and this is Egypt. Right? So we have Greece to the north, Libya to the southwest, and Egypt to the southeast. And what's the distance to, let's say, the coast of the, I guess it wouldn't really matter, just whatever part of Gaza, 878 kilometers as the crow. That's the ship, the Madeleine. That is not a big ship. That is not a secret clandestine meeting. They're constantly doing interviews with the press. They're live streaming. They've got trackers. They're encouraging everyone to share it. They've got trackers. They're encouraging everyone to share it, talk about it. Keep an eye on them. And whatever Israel's going to do, they're going to do it in front of everybody. I also started reading a bit about why the ship is called Madeleine, and it's actually named after a real woman, a real Palestinian woman, a mother, and her name is spelled two different ways. If you're spelling it in English, there's multiple ways. It says Madeleine Kulab with a C. But it's a pretty amazing woman. Super mom is one way you could say it. So, like, for example, when your mom cooked dinner for you today, or when your mom used to cook dinner for you back when you were young, or wherever you are in life, just imagine that situation. Did your mom go out on the boat into the sea and catch the fish that she cooked for dinner that night? Maybe some of you. But if you're in Palestine, that's not very likely. because there's no other women out on the docks, and fishing in Gaza is difficult. This is a beautiful article, and I would encourage you to read it. I'll put links and stuff in the description. This is Al Jazeera. Sardine Kofta in Palestine, a love story. This was written in 2022. All right, it's currently 2025. Now, from the latest update, Madeleine is still with us today. She's 30 years old and is apparently still alive and surviving, which is great. But this story is just a very beautiful little slice of life of their kind of daily routines and struggles and what they're doing. And look at that. That's not a stock photo. And a lot of these photos are very beautiful. Holding the kid, stirring the pot. Right? She was also out on the boat pulling in the nets. And she's pregnant here in this picture. So she's quite the badass. Her husband, her father are all fishermen. There's some parts of this maybe I want to highlight about, well before the October 7th, happened. This was just like daily life in Gaza, where you have the IDF patrolling the waters just outside of your city, and you're not allowed to go too far out and fish in your own waters. There's a lot of talk about the food here. The food, it sounds amazing. These photos, it looks fucking amazing. Something I'm always interested and fascinated in whenever I learn about another place and other people's. What do you eat? What's your food like? Because it's something that varies a lot more, even by, it's not just by country, right? It's like regions within places. Like if you forget about political borders, you have these kind of blurry, fuzzy, overlapping regions of peoples, right? And that's like reflected in how food is, So there's a lot of great descriptions of all the food she's making and stuff like that. Lots of descriptions of them and their feelings about their family. Of course, it's all very, very good and beautiful. It's wonderful. I don't want to just read the whole thing. I'm kind of sort of skimming through right now because there was some parts that I wanted to highlight. Let's see. It was when you were talking about their boats. Whatever the season, the fisher folk of Gaza are constrained by Israeli restrictions that limit how far they're able to go out to sea to find fish. Some fishers report having been harassed by Israeli gunboats, even if they have not strayed over the arbitrary line. Kadir is coming back to shore, so Madeline walks over to the water's edge. Two of the nearby fishers approach to help Kadir drag the boat back in. The boat's too heavy for Madeline during pregnancy. When the boat is in, she hops on because it's time to go collect all the nets that are hopefully laden with fish. Instead of sitting, she stands with her hands on her hips, silhouetted against a bright blue Gaza sky as her 29-year-old husband guides the boat out. Look at her. Look how she's standing there. Would you know how to stand like that? A new boat if their family is going to eat. And the 29-year-old Kader has lost 3 so far. Motherfuck. Can you imagine that? Random shelling of the docks. Like, we're not even out to sea, dude. We're literally parked. We couldn't get any like further away from this arbitrary line. You see what I mean about borders? Like, if you have a border across the sea, there is no border. It's just like they just get to patrol around whatever the fuck they want and shoot anyone who's like nearby at all. It's fucking crazy. Anyway, let's keep an eye on this. We'll keep half an eye on this. Tracking Madeleine. And, yeah, I highly recommend you read this article about Madeleine, the real Madeleine. Okay. Let's get to this musical. Because I am very curious about this. Here we go.
Topic of Israel
This
and
is Lex.
Palestine. Benny Morris, Muin Rabbani, and Stephen. The following is a debate on the topic of Israel and Palestine, with Norman Finkelstein, Benny Morris, Muin Rabbani, and Stephen Bennell, also known online as Destiny. There was a lot of tension in the room from the very beginning, and it only got more intense as we went along. We did talk about the history and the future, but the anger, the frustration, the biting wit, and at times respect and camaraderie were all there. Like I said, we did it in a perhaps all too human way.
I don't know where this part is from the debate, but it's really fucking funny. Obviously it's Lex. Obviously that's Lex. That is pure Lex. That's Lex being the most Lex you could imagine. Like, nobody can do Lex quite like Lex. We did talk about the history and the future.
About the history and the future, but the anger,
the frustration, the biting wit. The biting wit? And at times respect and camaraderie were all there. Like, just him I remember points in the debate where Lex cuts in and he's like, "Oh, on that point, we all agree. Oh, great. This camaraderie," right? He's like, he's so desperate to try to be like, "Whoa, get along." through the whole thing. And he's like, but there was a lot of tension and it got even worse. And what did he say? Oh, the biting wit. Like, he's like, you said something, and sure, it was, sure, it attacked, it was on the nose, and it was funny. The anger, the frustration, the biting wit. Like, what? One of those things doesn't belong kind of in that list. It's like, okay, the biting wit leak. Okay, this is great, but yeah, okay, let's keep going.
We did it in a perhaps all too human.
That was the other one. We did it in an all too human way. You know, so I guess we were just too human about it.
Human way. This thing that we have going on, human civilization, the whole of it is beautiful, and it's worth figuring out how we can help it flourish together. I love you all. Well, Palestinians have the right to resistance. That right includes the right to armed resistance. At the same time, armed resistance is subject to the laws of war. And there are very clear regulations that separate legitimate acts of armed resistance from acts of armed resistance that are not legitimate. The attacks of October 7th, where do they land? There's been almost an exclusive focus on the attacks on civilian population centers and the killings of civilians on October 7th. What is much less?
So this is actually not from the first 2 hours. This whole thing might skip over the first 2 hours, which would be a shame because there's some bangers in there. But I admit it's a long, long road. We haven't really even done our hour 2 finale. Final finale, at least. We've done the semifinals. But, yeah, this is when they're talking about October 7th, which is hour 3. That's when we're going to get into that. But we can still enjoy it.
Less discussed to the point of amnesia is that there were very extensive attacks on Israeli military and population centers and kill civilians. That's not what I said. What I said was I would not describe the effort to seize Israeli territory as in and of itself illegitimate, as a separate issue from the killing of Israeli civilians, where in those cases where they had been deliberately targeted, that's very clearly illegitimate. Whole families were slaughtered in kibbutzim, many of them left-wingers, incidentally, who helped Palestinians go to hospitals in Israel and so on.
You know, it has that musical thing where it's not necessarily a catchy melody. It's a lot of hanging on the same. You know, it's very repetitive, but that's that kind of style that musicals do. It makes it kind of go by snappier. It makes everything a little more memorable. I'm finding myself having a much easier time following along as it's turned to music. I don't know if anyone else finds that, but this is quite interesting to me. So, but Benny Morris is like, I condemn when Israel attacks civilians, but you don't do that for Hamas. And like, no, Rabbani had spent and very clearly described how he delineates from those things. He says, no, I don't believe that the killing, I do that, I condemn it for Israel. No, you don't. You deny it. You cover for it. You try to paint those who were killed as not civilians. I mean, when you just fucking flatten and bomb houses and schools and buildings and churches and what is that? What is that other than deliberately targeting civilians? I mean, get the fuck out of here. He's so full of shit, Benny Morris. But he's much more tolerable to listen to when it's being sung. I don't know what it is. It's very fascinating to me. I think everyone should sing their debates.
Condemnation.
I'm not talking about selective. I'm talking about specific condemnation of this specific attack on civilians.
You know what it is.
I would, for example, condemn Israeli assaults on civilians, deliberate assaults on civilians.
Yes.
I would condemn them, but you're not doing that with.
So one thing I really like about the way he turns speech into music is that he actually, when writing these melodies, he's maintaining the natural rhythm of the English language and not trying to force the language to fit like a melody. Do you know what I mean? So English requires like a nice, it has a natural rhythm to how you speak, right? There's a natural rhythm to how you speak. A natural rhythm to how you speak. Rhythm to how you, right? I don't say there's a natural rhythm to how you speak. I mean, you can maybe understand it, but it's not going to work as well if you have the correct rhythm and everything sounds right. If you accent the correct syllable, it's much easier to follow along. And he does that perfectly here. Because, sometimes you hear that with music where they're trying to just like cram words into an awkward melody. And so, like, instead of him saying,
I would, for example, condemn Israeli assaults on civilians, deliberate assaults on civilians.
Right? I mean, it has a natural rhythm to it. Deliberate assaults on civilians. Deliberate assaults on civilians, right? So it's just like a nice way of writing that, and he doesn't have to do something like deliberate assaults on civilians, right? Instead it's not like drawn out. It's just like ba 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 ba. It's opera, I think. See, usually I've never really heard operas in a language I understand or speak, but that's what this reminds me of. It's like they're just kind of talking, right? It's kind of just like, it's singing technically, but they're just like going on and on and on and on. It doesn't have the neat 4-bar phrasing and symmetry of like purely musical music. This is English language kind of based in terms of its like form and its rhythmic structure. Right? He's letting the words dictate how the music sounds, right? So I think that's a very good thing. I don't know much about the creator of these. Although I've watched a lot of the videos, he appears to me to probably be some kind of university professor in the opera department, or a grad student or something. He looks pretty young, but he knows what he's doing.
Where these individuals are asked to condemn what Israel is doing, the demand and obligation of condemnation is exclusively applied, in my personal experience over decades, is exclusively applied to Palestinians. No, this is nonsense. Israel is condemned day and night on every television channel and has been for the last 80 years. You about a personal experience lasting decades. Professor Morris, you just said, quote, uh-oh.
Uh-oh, indeed. Uh-oh, indeed. I'm so excited to hear what Norm Finkelstein's about to say. Let's go.
Oh no. I'm trying to quote what you just said. I shouldn't have said anything at any point.
Professor Morris.
Yes.
You just said.
Yeah. Benny, you shouldn't have fucking opened your mouth.
Shouldn't have said anything at any point.
Professor Morris.
Yes.
You just said I would condemn any time Israel deliberately attacks civilians.
Yes.
Problem, Professor Morris, is over and over again.
You claim in the face of overwhelming evidence that they didn't attack civilians. That's not true. The 1982 Lebanon War. What did I say? You don't remember. Allow me. Do you know that they killed 800 or 900 civilians in the assault? Absolutely, that seems to me indisputable. Okay, well, I'm glad you're conceding something. I've said that from... Haven't you did a debate? I don't remember the talk show. But you seem to imply that there was a lot of crossfire to maybe in the IDF that killed a lot of the... question that roughly of the 1,200 people who were killed, 800 of them were civilians. 850, fine. So I never said that, but then I said, no, we don't know it killed 850. No question there. And I also said on repeated occasions, there cannot be any doubt, in my opinion, as of now, with all the available evidence, that Hamas was responsible for significant... I made sure to include the... There's a lot of tricky language being employed here. Do you think of the 850? There's nothing tricky. It's called attaching value to...
We got some lag. We got a little lag.
We'll flock around to find out. We'll figure out who was right and wrong, right and wrong, right and wrong, right and wrong. Right and wrong. This is gonna take a long, long time, but we'll visit lots of rabbit holes along the way. We'll talk and we'll learn, we'll flock around and find out. We'll figure out who was right and wrong, right and wrong, right and wrong. Right and wrong, right and wrong. So don't watch, it'll take a long, long time, but we'll visit lots of rabbit holes along the way. We'll talk and we'll learn, we'll flock around and find out. We'll figure out who was right and wrong, right and wrong, right and wrong, right and wrong. 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 We'll figure out who was right and wrong, 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 right and wrong. Right and wrong. Don't on and watch the debate, but not just watch the debate. He has to start campaign and go back and watch again. The minutes in will aggravate you, so don't watch unless you want to. This is gonna take a long, long time, but we'll visit lots of rabbit holes along the way. We'll talk around and find out. We'll figure out what's right and wrong, right and wrong, right and wrong. Whoa. Go around and find out. Right and wrong, right and wrong, right and wrong. Ooh, this is gonna watch a debate, but not just watch a debate. He has to stop and wait and go back and watch again to get it straight. Hour 8, he's only been 10 minutes in, he'll aggravate you. So don't watch unless you want to. This is gonna take a long, long time, but we'll visit lots of rabbit holes along the way. We'll talk and we'll learn, we'll flock around and find out. We'll figure out who was right and wrong, right and wrong, right and wrong, right and wrong. Right and wrong. Ooh, ooh. 그동안 watch out the boy. Not I want you to baby, I have to stop it away and go back and watch again to get it straight. Our 8's only been 2 minutes and no aggravate. Yo, so don't watch. You want to. This is gonna take a long, long time, but we'll visit lots of rabbit holes along the way. We'll talk and we'll learn, we'll fuck around.
All right, enough of that garbage. Made myself a little grilled cheese. Well, hopefully this loads up a little bit. Buffers. Need some buffering.
To words, there's nothing tricky. It's called attaching value to words and not talking like a motor mouth.
Okay.
I am very careful about qualifying because that's what language is about.
That's great. Then let me just ask a clarifying question. Do you firmly believe that a majority of the 850 civilians were killed by Hamas?
Is that even if it were half, 400 is a
Why
huge
400?
number.
Whoever thought of that number? 400.
Right, as I
800 of the 850 were slaughtered by Hamas.
Well, if I may,
Maybe
I
a
don't
couple
know.
of individuals were killed in the Israeli action.
I don't know. I don't know.
You said from day one you believe this particular thing, and you clearly don't. Professor Morris.
Believe it. I said from day one.
You said
I
people died. That's not controversial.
Well, hold on, if I may. Mr. Bonnell! Mr. Bonnell! I attach value to words.
Yes, you've said that. If you value them, you shouldn't repeat them so much. How many of the civilians...
Mr. Bonnell, please slow down the speech and attempt to listen. When I was explicitly asked by Piers Morgan, I said there can be no question that Hamas committed atrocities.
I've heard this, yes.
October 7th, if you want me to...
What was once an incredibly disrespectful and infuriating attempt to demean and interrupt Norm and, purposely, misunderstand his point to try to attack him with it. That has been transformed into a beautiful little moment of two-voice harmony between Norm and Destiny. Let's listen to that again.
There can be no question that Hamas committed atrocities.
Oh, come on. Come on. All my shit is slow and weak and not working well.
Them so much. How many of the civilians...
Mr. Bonnell, please slow down the speech and attempt to listen. When I was explicitly asked by Piers Morgan, I said there can be no question that Hamas committed atrocities.
I've heard this, yes.
October 7th, if you want me to pin down a number, I can't do that.
I didn't ask you to pin down a number. My question, I'll ask a very
Bonnell.
precise question. It's a very easy question
to you.
It sounds cold to say it, but war is tragic and civilians die. There is no war that this has not happened in the history of all humankind. The statement that Israel might take care not to target civilians is not incompatible with a diary entry from someone who said they saw civilians getting killed. I think sometimes we do a lot of weird games when we talk about international humanitarian law or laws that govern conflict, when we say things like civilians dying is a war crime or civilian homes and hospitals getting destroyed is necessarily a war.
Oh my God. This is definitely from later in the debate than we've studied, but this sounds so much like Destiny. I think sometimes we do a lot of weird games when we talk about our international humanitarian law. Just this, he's a motor mouth. Norm called it. You motor mouth.
Compatible with a diary entry from someone who said they saw civilians getting killed. I think sometimes we do a lot of weird games when we talk about international humanitarian law or laws that govern conflict, when we say things like civilians dying is a war crime or civilian homes and hospitals getting destroyed is necessarily a war crime, or is necessarily somebody intentionally targeting civilians without making distinctions between military targets or civilian ones. I think that when we analyze different attacks or when we talk about the conduct of the military, I think it's important to understand perceptively from the unit of analysis the actual military committing the acts, what's happening and what are the decisions. War crime that you would potentially accuse, and this is according to Amnesty International, people that Norm loves to cite. Hamas is guilty of all these same war crimes, of them failing to take care of the civilian population, of them essentially utilizing human shields to try to affect international legal standards.
You don't know what's the correct international standards.
Norm, I absolutely do.
You haven't
I
a clue.
absolutely do.
Cause you can't find it.
Believe it or not, Norm, the entire Geneva Convention is all on Wikipedia. It's a wonderful website.
You know.
It's a wonderful website. He's he's standing up for Wikipedia, man. Go off, King. Dude, I don't need to actually read the law books. Read Wikipedia.
The entire Geneva Convention is all on Wikipedia. It's a wonderful website.
But you know what?
I'm just saying that on the Hamas side, there's an attempt to induce this type of military activity, an attempt to induce civilian.
I'm just saying, on the Hamas side, there's an attempt to induce that type of military activity. And to induce civilian harm. He's trying to just dress up his smart boy words to try to say Hamas uses human shields. I'm just saying that on the Hamas side, there's an attempt to induce that type of military activity and attempt to induce civilian harm. And what is that type of military activity? So he doesn't even say like Hamas. He says on the Hamas side. The Hamas side. What does that mean? And that Hamas is just, again, they just paint them as non-humans, right? That's kind of their, because the way they describe them, they're these like backwards people who love hate and hate love. They hate being comfortable and safe and warm. They prefer being in pain and wet and cold and hungry. And they like it like that. And they like it when they get blowed up with bombs. Because they're fucking sickos. They like want to blow up everybody all the time, and including themselves. Because they like to see their own people suffer. That's what we're meant to believe they are. For no other reason either. Because Israel totally hasn't really been that bad to them, I guess. So it's like, fuck, man. They're so ridiculous. And the way he has to just like dress up his language like this to say nothing. To say no thing. All right, let's keep going.
harm, that it's not enough to just say, well, here's a diary entry where a guy talks about how tragic the attacks are.
I think the problem with your statement is that if you go back and listen to it, the first part of it is war is hell, civilians die, it's a fact of life, and you state that in a very factual manner.
Military target or not, they weren't failing a distinction. There wasn't a proportionality assessment done. It was just to kill civilians. Even the Amnesty International in 2008 and 2014 and even today will
Don't think
say
you'll find anyone who will deny that Hamas has targeted civilians.
Sure.
You gave the example
that there's a
of
difference.
suicide bombings during the second
But I'm saying that Hamas targeting civilians is different than the incidental loss of life that Israel.
Oh, the incidental loss of
genocide is the intentional mass murder. Genocide is an
not in the business of intentionally targeting civilians. I know that's what we're supposed to believe, but the historical record
The
stands.
Hamas guys who attacked the kibbutzim, apart from attacks on the military sites, when they attacked the kibbutzim, were out to kill civilians. And they killed family after family, house after
let's
house.
take-
Israeli attacks on Hamas installations.
You know better.
No, I don't know better. Pilots.
Thank God.
You don't know Israeli pilots.
No, thank God.
They believe that they are killing the Hamasniks.
I'm sure
They're given
they believe
objectives
it.
when they attack.
I'm sure
and if
they
Hamas is
believe
hiding
it.
behind civilians, civilians die.
Every time they target a kid, I'm sure they believe
When
it's
they target
Hamas.
kids.
When they killed the 4 kids in the beach. Thank God.
You don't know Israeli pilots.
No, thank
They
God.
believe that they are killing the Hamasniks.
I'm sure
They're given
they believe
objectives
it.
when they attack.
I'm sure
and if
they
Hamas is
believe
hiding
it.
behind civilians, civilians die.
Every time they target a kid, I'm sure they believe
When
it's
they target
Hamas.
kids.
When they killed the 4 kids in the beach.
Yeah, they believe.
I know they believed, even though they were of diminutive size.
know that.
Even though they
At
were.
that angle, you don't see
Yeah,
the
they
size.
saw the size, but let's leave that aside.
Oh, I know what he's quoting from, but you've lied about this particular instance in the past. Those
Mister-
kids weren't just on the beach, as is often stated in articles. Those kids were literally coming out of a previously identified Hamas compound
Oh,
that
yeah.
they had operated from. They literally
Mr.
did.
Borelli, Mr.
You can
Borelli,
Google it.
with all due
Mr.
respect,
Finkelsteiner.
with all due respect,
You're such a fantastic moron. It's terrifying.
You're such a fantastic moron that it's terrifying. And he can't get his name right. And I think people are perceiving that as some kind of win by Destiny. No. I'm not. Of course, this fucking 70-year-old doesn't have any respect for you enough to fucking commit any of his brain power to learning and remembering your name. He kept that shit explicitly in his short-term memory and discarded it as soon as possible.
Hamas naval.
it's so painful to listen to this idiocy.
And to be clear, on the other side,
Okay.
you're implying that a strike was okayed on the Israeli side, where they said we're just gonna kill 4 Palestinian children today for no reason. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Do you believe that?
Okay.
Right, like you said, near a hotel of journalists.
Okay, do you believe?
Do you think they intentionally killed? That they were out to kill children?
Here we go.
He won't answer the question. He will never answer the question.
I will answer the question.
The pilots were out to
I
kill.
will even answer moron's question.
Because that was a strike. That was a drone strike.
Yeah.
So it was approved.
You said that.
All the way up the chain.
Okay.
That we're gonna kill children today. We're gonna kill Palestinian children.
Do you want me to answer, or do you?
What do you? Destiny is like. His big argument is to just say what Israel did, and then be like, you expect me to believe that? It's not a strong argument, because it's like, yeah, they did. They said we're gonna kill those 4 children today. Boom.
Want your motor mouth to go? Okay, answer. In 2018, there was the great.
Okay, I want to take that back. Let's pay attention to how long did it take them from the time to it?
Hotel of journalists.
Okay, do you
think they intentionally killed? That they were out to kill children?
Here we go.
He won't answer the question. Do you believe that?
Okay.
Right, like you said, near a hotel of journalists.
Okay, do you
think they intentionally killed?
that they were out to kill children? Here we go.
2 times. And then he says, okay. And then they turn to each other and say, he won't answer the question. He'll never answer that question. That question's too hard for him to answer. He'll never answer that question. His question being, do you really think that Israel would just deliberately target 4 children and kill them on the beach, as they in fact did do? Admitting that if it was a drone strike, it must have been something that was approved by high up authority through the military? Huh? Really? That's what you're saying? You're saying that thing that happened?
He will never
answer the question.
The pilots were out to
I
kill.
will even answer morons' question.
Because that was a strike that was approved.
You said that.
All the way.
Okay, not
They
bomb.
tried to make holes in the fence.
Okay.
Obviously.
Let's continue. Okay, not
They
bomb.
tried to make holes in the fence.
Okay.
Obviously.
Let's continue.
So first he says bombs. Norm immediately says bullshit, not bombs. And then he's like, but they tried to make holes in the fence. They tried to make holes in the fence. Oh my God. Hole in the fence. And I called the fucking bomb squad. And they showed up and they're like, technically we're not dealing with this, but it's a good thing that you called us, because it looks like it could have been a bomb because there was a hole in the fence. So thank you for calling us. And if you ever see another hole in the fence,
But I'm not sure Israel behaved
Along the Gaza perimeter is correct.
I don't know best trained. There were snipers.
Fine, okay, all right.
Snipers. They're editorial.
It's hilarious. The story's so funny.
You're lying. The Great March of
It's so
Return had
funny.
aspects of violence to it. Even the UN says it themselves. UN says that you lied.
You see, the problem, Mr. Morelli, is you don't understand the English language.
I can read from the UN website.
Did
in
I
regard to
say-
the Great March of Return, they
Please
say, well, the
stop
vast
with your
majority of
idiotic-
protesters acted in a peaceful
No, no,
manner.
listen to
In
what
most
he's saying. You
protests,
disagree
dozens
with
have
me.
approached the fence, attempting
Did I
to
say
damage it, burning fires,
overwhelmingly?
throwing towards Israel forces, flying incendiary kites and balloons into Israeli territory, the latter
Okay.
resulting in extensive damage to agricultural land and nature reserves inside Israel, and
Okay.
risk the lives of Israeli civilians.
Okay. Understand.
whoa, Mr. Borelli. You know, when it's turned into music, it still has the quality of being incredibly and does nothing to, like, if this were, I would say, you gotta get rid of this Bonelli, Morelli, whatever the guy is. It's not helping the narrative. It's not moving the conversation along. This is like just chaos agent in the midst of what's supposed to be a productive and educative dialogue. He's so out of place. And, you know, he's not helping Benny at all. Benny's not helping himself either. He's being a fucking stinker. I mean, I don't want my hatred for Steven to sort of overshadow disdain for Benny Morris. Because they're both bad, but they're just bad in different ways. Benny Morris only makes me mad because of the content of the words that come out of his mouth. Steven infuriates me not only by the content that comes out of his mouth, that's a given, but also the manner and style and tone in which it comes out of his mouth adds an entirely new extra layer of shit on top of this bullshit cake he's delivering. It's the fondant on top of it, you know? Motormouth is how Norm describes it, and I like that. I think that's a good it's a good descriptor of it. It's not necessarily effective against him. it's not the kind of thing you can say that's going to really throw him off. When he's like, what about this, huh? This. What about that? What's your answer to that? You can't answer that question. Yeah, because you can't answer it because it was a drone strike. It was a drone strike. You can't answer that question. And the only thing that shut him up was him saying, I'll answer your question. Keep your motor mouth. He said motor mouth again. Because at that moment, Destiny was being a little motor mouth. His mouth was motoring. And then this guy is doing the body language very well of acting out their parts, because he back and fold his arms and smirk like, okay, fine, let's hear this. Let's hear this. And he's like, do you really think Israel would just target children for no reason? Yeah, right. You can't even answer that. You can't answer if you think that. And then Norm's like, okay, not only did they do that, they have always been doing this. They did it in 2018 during the Great March of Return. Man. They did it. They do it. They've done it. They'll do it. They will have done it. They have had done it. They had done it. Whatever verbal tense you want to say. They had done it. They did it. They were doing it. They are doing it. They do it. They will do it. They will be doing it. They will have been doing it. They're all true. You can change the tense. Destiny, you suck so fucking hard. Let's listen to this again.
Along the Gaza perimeter, there was Israel's best trained snipers, correct?
I don't know best trained, there were snipers in there.
Satan! Okay. Overwhelmingly nonviolent, resembled at the beginning.
A few bombs here and there.
The first Intifada.
They threw bombs here and there.
Okay, not
They
bombs.
tried to make holes in the fence.
Okay,
Obviously.
let's continue. Israel behaved morally in that respect. As you know, along the Gaza perimeter, there was Israel's best trained snipers, correct?
I don't know best trained, there were snipers.
Fine, okay, all right.
Snipers, they're editorializing.
Hey, laugh, it's hilarious. The story's so funny.
You're lying. The Great March of
It's so
Return had
funny.
aspects of violence to it. Even the UN says it themselves.
Okay,
But you only
okay.
collect what the UN says that you like.
You see, the problem, Mr. Morelli, is you don't understand the English language.
I can read from the UN website.
Did
In
I
regard to
say-
the Great March of Return,
Please
they say, well, the
stop
vast
with your
majority of
idiotic-
protesters acted in a peaceful
No, no,
manner.
listen to
In
what he's
most
saying. You
protests,
disagree
dozens
with
have
me.
approached the fence, attempting
I
to
say
damage it, burning fires,
overwhelmingly?
throwing stones on molotels.
Okay.
Towards Israel forces, flying incendiary kites and balloons into Israeli territory, the latter
Okay.
resulting in extensive damage to agricultural land and nature reserves inside Israel, and
Okay.
risk the lives of Israeli
Mr.
civilians. Some instances of
Mr.
shooting and
Borelli.
throwing explosives off the...
Talk fast, so people think you're coherent.
I'm just reading from the
Yeah, but
UN.
you
You
see,
like them sometimes, only when they agree with you, though.
You got the months wrong. You got the
That is that fucking childish ass way to look at things, where it's like, if you make an argument and you use a source to make that specific argument, there is, there in order, okay, to steelman this, it's like saying, well, you use a resource which you deem to be a credible source. You used a source that you deem credible, yet you're not believing this credible thing said by the same source, right? That's supposedly what he's trying to get at. But the way he says it is, you only like them when they say things you agree with. You only like them when they agree with you. Now, this is all beside the point that what Norm Finkelstein said is not at all contradicted by anything that Stephen read in that department, right? Norm definitely didn't deny that some people were trying to kick holes in the fence and throwing rocks and a couple of burning bottles here and there, which happened as a response to to the aggression that that Israeli army started, right? He's saying the first few months or whatever of this March of Return was entirely peaceful, and then it started to pop off, and they were deliberately sniping people, right? And so to see Stephen just being like, "You're lying. It wasn't. There were aspects of violence to it." Yeah, bitch. He said mostly peaceful. It's mostly. You could disagree that it's mostly peaceful, but you can't say that he's lying and that he claimed that there was zero violence. He said it was mostly peaceful, which means that there was some heat, there was some kinetic activity going on. But the whole point is, it was entirely disproportionate of a response to start just picking off women, children, disabled people, shooting people in the fucking knee. I mean, Jesus, fuck. This is one of the ugliest parts of this whole thing, when they're trying to justify the atrocity of what happened during the March of Return. I mean, obviously they're trying to justify fucking the siege on Gaza as well, but just like the jubilant, smiley. No, they were trying to kick down the fence, so it was totally fine. Fuck you.
Sometimes only when they agree with you, though. You got the months wrong.
We're talking about the beginning in March 30th, 2018.
You just described that March as mostly peaceful.
Allow me to finish, okay?
Now you find it so far-fetched. Israelis purposely, deliberately targeting civilians. That's such a far-fetched idea. An overwhelmingly non-violent march. What did the international investigation?
It wasn't a march, it was a campaign with people, which went on for months.
Yeah.
It wasn't a march, it was a campaign with people. It wasn't a march, it was a campaign with people. Jesus! Like, they're so desperate to just, like, derail. Because they know, Benny Morris knows that Norm Finkelstein knows what the fuck happened during the March of Return. And Benny Morris knows it too. And he doesn't want to talk about it. You heard him at one point go, and I actually think some of that was wrong by Israel. Like, he's trying to be like, hey, no, I'm not saying they're perfect. I admit they did some bad things there. Right? But then, and then in the next breath is jumping in to minimize and defend and inflate what was happening from the Palestinian side, from within the Great March of Return. Norm's trying to be specific about, let's not just talk about the march. It was a multi-month-long thing, right? He said that. And then Benny Morris is like, it wasn't a march. It went on for months and it had people. Like, okay, the fuck are you talking about? He just said it went on for months. That's what he was saying at first. He's saying in the early months of the March of Return. Stephen's trying to talk about it as if it's all this one-day event. Norm is correct. Benny Morris is trying to contradict and argue with shit that he never denied. This happens over and over in this debate where they're just like, well, you won't admit that this thing, and did you know? And he's like, yeah, no, I literally said that already. Not only did I admit it, I literally opened by saying, well, this happened, and then this happened. And they're like, but you never said this happened. No, Stephen, I did say that. I literally spent 10 minutes fucking laying out my case, and it included that stupid fact that you think that I'm afraid to admit to. It happens over and over and over. Nothing in that UN report that Stephen read has anything to contradict the point that Norm's making. Stephen is the one who's trying to, like, spin it as if there's any instances of violence or conflict or Palestinians acting up and all, then he can therefore call Norm a liar for wanting to talk about how during the first early months of this thing it was entirely peaceful, and then it was unpeaceful, in the later months of it, when the Israel army started getting involved and fucking killing people and shooting and maiming people. And Benny Morris, all he has to say is, it wasn't a march. It was something that lasted for months and months. Like, okay? Welcome to the conversation. He already said that. He said it involved people, and it went on for months and months. You fucking fuck. Jesus.
Non-violent march. What did the international investigation?
It wasn't a march, it was a campaign with people which went on for months.
Yeah, what did the UN investigation find?
Well, he just read it to you.
I read the report. I don't read things off of those machines. I read the report. What did it find? Brace yourself. You thought it was so funny, the idea of IDF targeting civilians. It found, go look this up on your machine.
I already know what you're gonna...
Cook him. Look how defensive he's like, oh, I already know what you're about to say. Yeah, dude. He's saying back to you what you were just saying, how you just want to pick and choose from the UN report. You fuck.
You're gonna say that it found that only 1 or 2 of them were justified killings.
It targeted children, targeted journalists, targeted funniest one of all that's so hilarious. They targeted disabled people who were 300 meters away from the fence and just standing by.
If this is true...
If it's true...
just a quick pause. I think everything was fascinating to listen to except the mention of hilarious. Nobody finds any of this hilarious, and if any of us are laughing, it's not at the suffering of civilians or suffering of anyone. It's at the obvious joyful camaraderie in the room. So I'm enjoying it.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Lexifer Friedman, fuck. Lexifer fucking Friedman, what the fuck did you just fucking say?
It's not at the suffering of civilians or suffering of anyone. It's at the...
Targeted medics, and here's the funniest one of all that's so hilarious. They targeted disabled people meters away from the fence and just standing by.
If this is true...
If it's true...
just a quick pause. I think everything was fascinating to listen to except the mention of hilarious.
This is another great Lexism. I think everything was fascinating to listen to, except the mention of hilarious. The mention of hilarious. So obviously, Norm mentioned hilarious. Norm was the mentioner. Why did Norm mention hilarious? Was it because of the awkwardness and the camaraderie between them? Was it the feeling of camaraderie between their fellow man sitting across the table? Even though they are, sitting across as opponents, that they feel their true feelings of camaraderie and brotherhood of man between each other. And Norm mentioned hilarious out of a sense of respect and goodwill, or that to attack those that were laughing, because they weren't laughing at the targeting of civilians. Laughing?
Nobody finds any of this hilarious, and if any of us are laughing, it's not at the suffering of civilians or suffering of anyone. It's at the obvious joyful camaraderie in the room.
The obvious joyful camaraderie in the room. Lexifer Friedman. Lexifer. Lexifer Gareth Friedman. What in the fuck are you talking about? What in the fuck are you talking about, Lex fucking Friedman? Oh, what the fuck are you talking about, Lex? What the fuck you talking about, Lex? What the fuck you talking about, Lex Friedman? Bum, 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 bum. What the fuck you talking about, Lucifer? What the fuck you talking about, Lucifer? What the fuck are you talking about, Lucifer Friedman? You motherfucker. If anyone's laughing, it's at the obvious joyful camaraderie in the room. Maybe we'll give Lex the benefit of the doubt that Lex was just not listening at all. Well, he's listening to a degree. I would say he's thinking about how he can appear neutral and how he can do/say something to try to seem to want to cut the tension and lower the temperature. I believe it's not his style to have a wild screaming match and drama on his show. So I believe he genuinely doesn't want that to happen. So his attempt to play referee is on his mind. He's probably got half his mind thinking, okay, like if they say this, then or if it gets this much, I have to step in. I might have to interrupt somebody. Right? And so he's thinking about that. I think he also has a bias towards Destiny and Benny. And while I think he's trying to hide it, he's not doing a good job because can't consider all the facets, all the ways in which your bias can infiltrate your actions in ways that maybe you're not aware are very obvious to others. Here's a brilliant example. What we just saw here where Norm is indignant that Stephen and Benny were both chuckling in the middle of him trying to make this case, make this point. They asked a very serious question, and Norm is giving a very serious answer. They're discussing how 4 innocent boys were killed on the beach of Gaza by a deliberate drone strike attack from Israel. Apparently, Benny and Destiny want to say that it was an accident, or no, they're saying those they were leaving a Hamas headquarters where there was known Hamas activity going on, and they saw them exiting from that building, so they figured they must be Hamas. So, yeah, they kids on the beach, but they thought they were Hamas at the time. It's like when those police shootings, when they shoot an unarmed, and it's like, oh, he was just holding, like Skittles. But I thought it could have been a gun. A lot of times in similar situations, the people do have a gun there instead of Skittles. So I thought it was a gun, even though it wasn't. And they get away with it. So Israel can kind of do that shit where they're like, we thought they were Hamas. I didn't know they were kids. Sorry. Should have been. That's actually Hamas's fault for why would they build a base right where people can go in and out of that are children, because then it makes us want to shoot them and kill them. We can't take any risks. We can't let anyone go in and out of a house where Hamas activity. What was the Hamas activity? It was a fisherman's hut. It was a little hut for catching fish. Remember this article we started at the beginning? I don't know if my internet was even working. How much of that went? We just read we briefly went through. I read it earlier. Very beautiful article and story about this very, very difficult life of being a fisher person, because she's a fishing woman and he's a fishing man, and that's a little fishing baby and a fishing grandpa. And yeah. By the way, our update here. Maybe that was earlier. Madeline. Let's see the tracker. Where are they? Okay. In the Mediterranean. Almost. Say directly north now of Egypt, and to the north is this big fucking island. I think is part of Greece. Maybe if I get in closer, it'll show me some labels. I don't know if it has labels. So how far are they? Also, like a week or two ago, there was one of their ships that they were meant to get on was parked at a harbor, and it got fucking bombed by Israeli drones. Look how fucking far away that is from Israel. I'm sorry. Look how fucking far that is from all occupied Palestine. It's so fucking far. Is this Malta? Oh, this is Malta. This looks like they left from Sicily. But they had some good food on their way out. Pretty soon they'll be around Turkey, Cyprus, Egypt. I mean, they're not going to probably go closer to Turkey. They'll probably go this way-ish. But the Gaza Strip is right on the border of Egypt. And what are these lines I see in the map on the sea here? Are these sea borders? Oh, does this play back the journey? The blockade is illegal under international law. There's a real and well-documented risk of interception by Israeli naval forces. Past flotillas have faced violent raids, unlawful detentions, and the obstruction of humanitarian missions. In this context, the tracker is not simply a navigation. By continuously broadcasting the location, the tracker allows supporters, journalists, legal observers, and human rights organizations around the world to follow the vessel in real time. This visibility acts as a deterrent to violence and unlawful interference while also ensuring that any acts of aggression can be documented and investigated. It's an essential part of a broader strategy of nonviolent resistance and international solidarity. So they had to do some kind of maneuver here. What was this? June 4th, 22. I don't know what time zone. They had to do a little zoopy zoop. That may have been. I don't know, because the time, unless it's, yeah, if it's their local time, yeah, that right at 12:30 at night, because they said it happened at night when the drones were flying around them. So maybe they were doing some evasive maneuvers. Try to shake it. That's interesting. I don't know. God, it's so crazy. All right, let's go back to the musical.
So I'm enjoying it. And also, so thank you.
Oh, yeah, fucking Lex. What a stupid idiot. I'm enjoying the joy of learning. You are not listening to what they're saying. You're not listening. Jesus Christ. They're saying hey, Israel deliberately bombed these children. The other side says, no, well, no, they thought they were Hamas. You're lying. They did bomb those 4 children, but it's not because they were children. It's because they thought they weren't children. Or are you suggesting that they killed them even though they knew they were children? Yeah, I am saying that because they have a history of doing that during this thing. And then they're like, oh, yeah, but they were putting holes in the fence. They threw rocks and Molotov cocktails. And Norm's like, they were sniping the weakest people they could find just to be extra cruel. They were targeting elderly, disabled children, not elderly children, elderly people, comma, disabled people, comma, children people, comma, women people. And I'm sure they killed some men people too. But overwhelmingly, we're targeting these weaker ones, as if they're like thinning out the herd, but wanted to keep. Like, it's fucking disgusting. Okay, and then Lex, if you were listening to that and you had 2 fucking brain cells to rub together, you'd be like, well, okay, so you guys are saying they tried to put a hole in the fence and they threw rocks and Molotov cocktails, and you're saying that they deliberately gunned down a bunch of people, a bunch of innocent people. No, instead, so they have their military shoot the children and the elderly and the disabled. Ah, that's great. Ah, fascinating. So fast. Also, the reason they were laughing and snickering was when Norm was trying to explain this, he said they're best snipers. And he's like, well, I don't know about best, but yes, they had snipers. And then Stephen of, what do you call it? Trying to gussy up the language, to try to intensify it, to overinflate it, right? To make it sound worse, like using, what's the word? Like, a
Funniest one of all, it's so hilarious. It mattered. Investigation.
It wasn't a march, it was a campaign with people, which went on for months. For months.
Yeah, what did the UN investigation find?
Well, he just read it to you.
I read the report. Go look this up on your machine.
I already know what you're gonna say.
You got the months wrong.
You're gonna say.
You got the months wrong. We're talking about the beginning in March 30th, 2018.
You just described that march as mostly peaceful.
Allow me to finish, okay? Now you find it so far-fetched. Israelis purposely, deliberately targeting civilians. That's such a far-fetched idea. An overwhelmingly non-violent march. What did the international investigation?
It wasn't a march, it was a...
There was Israel's best trained snipers, correct?
I don't know best trained, there were snipers.
Fine, okay, all right.
Snipers, they're editorializing.
They're editorializing. That's fucking rich. They're editorializing. Yeah, there were snipers, but they weren't the best snipers. Oh my God, you're really blowing this story out of proportion. I was like, Mama, they got snipers on the roofs. And she said, are they the best snipers? I don't know, cause like a couple of bullets flew past us and didn't hit anybody. But then a bunch of people got hit. I got hit in the leg. Oh. But a lot of the bullets missed too, right? So it's probably weren't the best snipers. What are you crying about? What are you crying about? It's not it's not a big deal if they weren't the best snipers. Whoa, hold on, wait a minute. I thought it was the best snipers that shot those children and elderly and disabled people. That's so weird. I can't believe I let the media trick me into thinking that it was the best snipers that did it. Turns out we don't even actually know if they were the best snipers. They may have just been average snipers. Fuck, they could have been below average snipers. Oh my God, that changes everything. Fuck those elderly people. I mean, that guy wasn't even a sharpshooter. You should have been able to dodge that shit. Them like those sub-tier snipers, the ones that are let's call them junior varsity. Huh. Dude, if you even if you're in a wheelchair, I could shoot you. I could try to shoot you with a sniper rifle and you would just dodge right out of it. Because only the best snipers are really able to purposely kill people, right? Guys, it was just really bad snipers, and they were just doing target practice, and they forgot which way the targets were. They thought they were shooting targets. They thought that their friends had set up the target. That's fucking rich. We're gonna keep that in mind as we go through and we listen to Benny and especially Pestiny when when they're trying to describe some situation. Let's find out if they ever editorialize their words. If they ever editorialize it. Like, remember when Benny Morris was like, just a couple of bombs here and there, just a few bombs. And he's like, no, there were no bombs. Benny immediately collapses. He goes, but they tried to put holes in the fence, right? So it's just immediately conceding, okay, fine, there were no bombs. Benny, were you editorializing? Or were you editorializing? Or were you just straight up lying? And in such a lazy way where it's like, hey, I'll say it. I ain't gonna like stand up for it, but maybe he'll ignore it and talk about the thing he's trying to talk about right now instead. But then I'll just throw that thing at him because he's answering their question. He's answering their question, which is on what on earth do you actually believe that Israel would deliberately target innocent people for their attacks? Seriously? Answer that question. Do you seriously believe that? The Pope Catholic? Does a bear shit in the woods? Right, one of those old chestnuts. His answer is not only yes, but you bet your goddamn ass. Let me tell you a story about what happened about 8 years ago. The deliberately targeted civilian UN report you keep squawking about. You ding dong. That's a lie. You said there's no such thing as black squirrels. Like, okay, no, I didn't fucking say that. I literally didn't say that. I said most are brown. There's a lot of black squirrels, though, too. But they don't make up most of the squirrels. Most squirrels are not white. Oh, you literally just said there's no such thing as white squirrels. I just won the debate. That's not how debating works. At least to anyone who has a fucking brain who's not completely motivated reasoningly trying to stick up for one side or the other. Lex does an amazing job of just completely like missing all the point. He didn't get the point. He didn't understand why Norm Finkelstein was enraged that these guys made a joke and started laughing in the middle of what he said, and they're not listening. And then he's now trying to get into the weeds of the Great March of Return. He had his talking points. Like he was prepared for this debate by having all his little talking points with his like frequently argued points and their rebuttals, right? That's kind of how he's preparing for this. And you can see him just snap into action. As soon as he mentions the Great March of Return, you see him light up and he's like, ooh, got my notes right here. Got my UN report here. I got the part where it talked about the limited amount of violence that occurred in this event that occurred over the course of 6 months. Not listening at all to whatever's being sent over him by Norm, whatever Norm's arguing. Steven's not listening. He's just looking at his stupid little thing, and he's like, he's got like they will say this: the Great March of Return was 100% peaceful, no exceptions. And here's your counter to that. Gotcha, buddy. It had aspects of violence, therefore it wasn't 100% peaceful. Yeah, And so, yeah, if you were arguing against an idiot who was just like, maybe, I'm sure there's people out there who would just obstinately argue the opposite of whatever you're saying, deny anything that he heard that he thought sounded bad for his case, right? Just be like, well, that never happened. That's a lie. Maybe there's people like that. Maybe, and I think that's kind of who Destiny thought he was going to be up against. Someone who is just like they must be really crazy because I kind of think my side it's got a lot of difficulties in how to defend it. It's kind of tough. You got to really work at it. You got to really prepare for this shit. Oh my God. All right. Listen to what he's saying. Benny's like, you got to listen to him. And he's such a fucking stinker. He's like, I can read you the report. And then he says, no, don't do that. And he just does it anyway. Because he thinks it's going to prove something. It's not at all. What are you fucking proving?
Dozens have approached the fence, attempting to damage it, burning fires, throwing stones on Molotov cocktails. Towards the Israel forces, flying incendiary kites and balloons into Israeli territory, the latter resulting in extensive damage to agricultural land and nature reserves inside Israel, and risk the lives of Israeli civilians. Some instances of shooting and throwing explosives off the... Talk fast, so people think you're coherent. I'm just reading from the UN. You like them sometimes, only when they agree with you, though. You got the months wrong.
We're talking about the beginning in March 30th, 2018.
You just described that march as mostly peaceful.
Allow me to finish, okay?
Now you find it so far-fetched. Israelis purposely, deliberately targeting civilians. That's such a far-fetched idea. An overwhelmingly non-violent march. What did the international investigation...
It wasn't a march, it was a campaign with people which whatever you want to call it.
For months.
Yeah, what did the UN investigation find?
Well, he just read it to you.
I read the reports. What did it find?
Brace yourself. You thought it was so funny, the idea of IDF targeting civilians.
It found that only 1 or 2 of them were justified killings.
It targeted children, targeted journalists, targeted medics, and here's the funniest: people who were 300 meters away from the fence and just standing by.
If this is true...
Boy of the camaraderie in the room. Listen to this shit.
Except the mention of hilarious. Nobody finds any of this hilarious, and if any of us are laughing, it's not at the suffering of civilians or suffering of anyone. It's at the obvious joyful camaraderie in the room. So I'm enjoying it, and also the joy of learning.
Oh my God. Also the joy of learning. It is a joy, isn't it? The joy of learning. My God. Lexifer. You. Oh, why are you such a walnut head? Why?
So thank you.
You don't understand the strength of the claim that you're making.
With all due respect,
You're saying
with
that
all due
from a
respect,
top-down level,
Mr. Bennell.
that lawyers, multiple command people signed off on killing 4 Palestinian children.
Do not tell me what I don't understand. It's true. I don't spend my nights on Wikipedia. I read books.
A waste
I
of
admit
time.
that as a signal.
Wasting time.
I know
How do you
the
they are if the only
regard
things
there.
you take from them are 2 or 3?
I completely respect the fact, and I'll say it on the air, as much as I find totally disgusting what's become of your politics. A lot of the books are excellent. And I'll even tell you, because I'm not afraid of saying it, whenever I have to go check on a basic fact, the equivalent of going to the Britannica, I got a lot of the facts right. Benny Morris's books for the listener. I would never say books are a waste of time, and it's regrettable to you that you got strapped with a partner.
I never
All
said
of the
books are a
wisdom-
waste of time. Only your books,
You
Norm.
didn't say that.
The court is not asked at this present phase of the proceedings to determine whether South Africa's allegations of genocide are well-founded.
Didn't I just
It's
say
not
that?
well-founded. It's not even well-founded. You said that plausible was a high standard. It is absolutely not. It is a misrepresentation of the strength of the case against Israel, just like the majority of the quotes they have in this case are. And also you said it was an extremely well-founded case. They spent like 1/4 of all the quotation to try to actually deal with the intent part. Which, by the way, I think you guys, I don't know if you used the phrase, the dolus specialis, that the intentional part of genocide.
Sorry, I don't know that term.
I think it's called the dolus specialis.
That's quite a pivot. Destiny can pivot from hot to cold corner, but he knows how to posture like he's somehow dominating this conversation. Suddenly he's like, and there's this term, I don't know actually. Do you call it a this thing? Is that right? Like you suddenly get into this like passive, oh, I'm actually you know a little more about some of this than I do, actually. Tell him, what's that? What is that thing gonna do? That's a very interesting pivot, energy pivot of how to getting out of a hold, getting out of being backed into a corner. He is absolutely no argument, and then we just switch.
Was a high standard. It is absolutely not. It is a misrepresentation of the strength of the case against Israel, just like the majority of the quotes they have in this case are. And also you said it was an extremely well-founded case. They spent like 1/4 of all the quotations. Some even pulled from the Goldstone report to try to actually deal with the intent part. I don't know if you used the phrase specialis, that the intentional part of genocide.
Sorry, I don't know that term.
I think it's called the dolus specialis. It is the most important part of genocide, which is proving the highly special intent to commit genocide. It's possible
That's mens rea.
that Israel...
That's mens
No.
It proves.
Yes, I understand the state of mind, but for genocide there is, it's called the dolus specialis. It is the highly special intent. Did you read the case?
Yeah.
It is the highly special intent.
Mr. Borelli, I'm going to ask you again. Please stop displaying your imbecility.
Okay, I'm sorry if you think the declaration of the judge is
Don't put on
imbecility.
public display that you're a moron. At least have the self-possession to shut up. Did I read the
I'm
case?
comfortable putting my display on camera.
Mr.
You're comfortable putting
Morelli.
yours in
I read
books.
the case around 4 times. I read all of the majority opinion. I read around Barack's declaration.
Then why are you lying and saying plausible is a high
Because I said
standard?
even reaching the benchmark of plausibility is a very high standard in the world. It's the equivalent of a regional player qualifying for an Olympics. It's still 2 steps removed. You may not be on the team and you may not get a medal, but to get qualified, which in this context is the equivalent of plausible, you must be doing something pretty horrible.
With an Islamic fundamentalist government for Hamas, I don't know if a negotiation with Israel ever happens there. And when the international pressure is always, 67 borders, infinite right of return for refugees, and a total withdrawal of Israel from all of these lands to even start negotiations, I just don't see realistically on the Palestinian side. No negotiations are going to start in a place that Israel will accept.
If you want to dismiss international law, that's fine. But then you have to do it consistently. You can't set standards for the Palestinians, but reject applying those standards to Israel. If you're gonna have the law of the jungle, then we can all be beasts, and not only some of us. And so it's either that, or you have certain agreed standards that are intended to regulate our conduct, all our conduct, not just some of us.
Well, what are the standards you think I'm saying to abandon?
Well, you're saying international law and the millionth UN resolution. You're being dismissive about all these things.
I'm not being
And
dismissive.
that's fine, but then you have to be dismissive across
I'm
the
saying,
board.
for instances like 242, that's a Chapter 6 resolution. That's non-binding.
Of course it's binding.
It's absolutely not.
What is binding? Do you know anything about how the UN system works?
Binding, if you read the language of the resolution, binding is typically, it commits you to upholding a particular international law, or if it establishes a
What
new
is
rule.
Chapter 6? You just throw out words. You hear binding, non-binding.
Does 242 even mention a Palestinian state? No.
Of course
That's
not.
the problem.
That's the reason why the Palestinians didn't want to recognize 242. Allow me a point of information.
Yeah.
The first principle of UN Resolution 242 is the inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by force.
Which is meaningless.
It may be meaningless to you, Mr. Bennell.
It was meaningless to everyone in the
Okay,
region.
Mr. Bennell. That principle was adopted by the Friendly Nations Resolution in 1970. That resolution was then reiterated in the International Court of Justice ruling advisory opinion in 2004. It was the basis of the coalition against Iraq when it acquired Kuwait and then declared it.
Which Arafat supported.
It's called under international law, just Kogan's or peremptory norms of international law.
Okay. I really like this. I like absorbing the conversation this way. I think on a first pass it's going to be good. I'm interested to also slow down and dig into all of these arguments and go back and really listen to all this again. But I'm very pleased with the presentation. I love the music. It's working. It's just working really well. It just makes it so much more pleasant when they interrupt each other, that there's like harmonies and stuff. I really hope I really want to hear what Moeen Rabbani was about to say when he's like, let me. And then Norm kind of just steamrolled over him because he had to get some things out, but then now it's getting off in his rabbit trail. I hope he gets to go off. I really, really hope he does.
The inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by war. That is not controversial. It's not vague. You couldn't put it more succinctly. You cannot acquire territory by force under international law.
Who owned the West Bank before 67?
That is...
Who owned Gaza before 67?
He had basically the Jordan Peterson defense with that. Under international law, you cannot acquire land by force. And Stephen's like, which is meaningless. What does acquire even mean? What does land even mean? What do you mean by force? What do you mean by buy? We didn't do it with force. We did it with force. Yes, we complied with the law. We
of territory by war. That is not controversial. It's not vague. You cannot acquire
Bank before 67.
That is...
Who owned Gaza before 67?
Palestine. What is he saying? Before 67? Is he talking about the Green Line? Because lots and lots of land has been seized by force within the Green Line. You dumb fuck.
We even mentioned a Palestinian state. No, of course
That's
not.
the problem.
That's the reason why the Palestinians didn't want to recognize 242. Allow me a point of information.
Yeah.
The first principle of UN Resolution 242 is the inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by force.
Which is meaningless.
It may be meaningless to you, Mr. Bennell. It was meaningless to everyone in the region, Mr. Bennell. That principle was adopted by the Friendly Nations Resolution, the UN General Assembly in 1970. That resolution was then reiterated in the International Court of Justice ruling advisory opinion in 2004. It was the basis of the coalition against Iraq when it acquired Kuwait and then declared it a province of Kuwait.
Yeah, which Arafat supported.
It's called under international law, just cogents or peremptory norms of international law. The inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by war. That is not controversial. It's not vague. You couldn't put it more succinctly. You cannot acquire territory by force under international law.
Who owned the West Bank before 67?
That is...
Who owned Gaza before 67?
Mr. Bennell, don't change the subject. If you don't know what you're talking about,
It's not about changing the subject. I'm curious,
Norm.
Norm.
How close is 242? You talk about Chapter 6. You don't know. How close is 242? You don't know Chapter 6 from Tweet 5. How close is 242? You have no idea what you're talking about. It's just so embarrassing. At least have some humility. Between us, we've read maybe 10,000 books on the topic, and you've read 2 Wikipedia entries. When you start talking about Chapter 6, do you know what Chapter 7 is? Answer me! Answer the question! Answer the question! How close is 242 gotten the Palestinians to a state?
Let me answer this.
How close is the 2004 advisory opinion gotten the West Bank
Your
settlements?
alternative. The alternative is not this. Whatever this
Making money off the conflict is. Destiny should talk about making money off of idiocy. Yes, your media blitz, where you go and talk to 50 million people about your awesome solution.
He has a point.
Oh my God. Where have I heard this before? Where have I heard this before? It was from a podcast called I Hate Bill Maher, who was talking about the season finale of the second season of Real Time with Bill Maher from 2004. And he had Noam Chomsky on as a guest. And then he had this other fucking asshole on the panel, some conservative asshole, I can't remember his name, but he was super big mad that Noam Chomsky said that that America was the bad guy for invading Iraq and it was a war crime. And even Bill Maher didn't even agree with him, but with Noam Chomsky, the asshole, because Noam was fucking completely right. But nobody else wanted to believe him. But this dude got so mad, and then he accused Noam Chomsky of trying to profit off of the war by going around and doing lots of speaking to millions of people, because he appears on the news and on podcasts all the time as an interview subject. And so that somehow equates to talking to millions and millions of people, and that somehow equates to making millions and millions of dollars. Very, very fucking ironic that he throws it in there, because I mean, somebody's putting money into this guy. Who would spend 2 weeks teaching him Hasbara to prep him for a debate with Norman Finkelstein for free? I mean, he might have paid someone to do it. Paid a Hasbarist to tutor him. But I have a feeling maybe he got funding from outside for this. That's just a feeling I have. I obviously don't know. I can't get inside his head, so who knows? But that's still a little rich to just try to accuse Norm Finkelstein of being a millionaire off of the conflict just because he does a lot of media tours. That's a really dumb low. It's a low blow, but it doesn't even really hit. It's just like, oh please, like fuck, just shut the fuck up. Just shut your fucking ass up. You're such a fucking you're not serious. You're not contributing to anything that anyone's saying at all. You're such a fuck up. You're such a fuck up. You shut the fuck up. That should be a saying. That should be like an idiom. You're such a fuck up. You shut the fuck up. You're such a fuck up. You shut the fuck up. That should be a bumper sticker. Or like, put that on a fucking, like a cookout apron or something. Where like on the top it says, you're such a fuck up. You're such a fuck up. And then under that it says, you shut the fuck up. Mr. Bernal, you are a fantastic moron that it's frightening. You're such a fantastic moron that it's frightening. I would say, you're such a fuck up. You shut the fuck up. No, I'll say, you shut the fuck up. You're such a fuck up. I think that order makes more sense. You shut the fuck up. You're such a fuck up. It's poetry, man. I'm making poetic verses. Okay, we've only got 4 minutes left. You know, I'm really enjoying this as a musical. It makes me want to stop it less. It makes it more pleasant to hear. It makes it easier for me to follow along. Honestly. I'm way less distracted than usual. And we've almost watched an entire half hour. It's amazing.
Though
What point?
all these resolutions have gotten the Palestinians no closer to a state.
Because it hasn't been enforced because of the U.S. veto. They're not going to be enforced. They're going nowhere. How's it going to be enforced? The ICJ hasn't even.
Professor Morris. because of your logic, and I'm not disputing it. That's why October 7th happened, because there were no options left for those people.
And now what options are left?
Mentality for 60 years. The options come left. The only options come left. He just didn't
I feel like
This is amazing. Whenever, as we go through this debate, whenever we get to this part, I'm going to come back to this video to help me with the subtitles to figure out who's saying what. This is fucking great. So it's all, this would be like torture to listen to or to sit through, to sit there and listen to people try to say, it would make me want to speak up and say, "Oh, Bill, shut up!" Like, but this guy musicified it, and it sounds great.
left for those people.
And now what options are left?
Mentality for 60 years. The only options come left. He just didn't
Is there a term for this kind of thing when four people who are trying to have a one person at a time talk conversation suddenly all can't help themselves and they all just go on and on and on? Is there a term for this? It's like a traffic jam. Conversational traffic jam. Because nobody's listening to anyone else because everyone's talking. You can selectively listen to people when you're talking, but you're not really taking in what people are saying when you're talking. You might selectively hear something and then intuit through the context what they said and be correct sometimes, but you can also be incorrect about what they said, or you can also be like, I don't really like that. I like to spin it like this. I like to say it in a different way. Do you look at this? I just noticed what the subtitles in this freeze frame say. This just made me laugh. I want to get rid of this hide. There we go. Okay, so here we have Rabbani, the regional conflict and geopolitical complications. Yeah, that's how he's been talking. He talks very like matter-of-factly, but also very scholarly. He sounds like a textbook. He is full of fire. He's full of emotion. And they killed 1,200 Israelis that day. And then we have Steve. This has to be Stephen. Sometimes I feel like a weird shift happens. That's exactly like his stupid little squirrely fluff that he says to wrap up, like it's completely out of place. He's literally just talking to talk, and he's just like reaching into his shallowest bag of tricks where he says, I feel like sometimes this happens. I feel like sometimes there's like when he's trying to call out someone's hypocrisy, he doesn't say you're a hypocrite. It says this, but yet for your side it's this. Just say it. Instead, he's like, I feel like sometimes there's this weird shift in mentalities when some people consider the Israeli side and versus the Palestinian side, and I feel like very often they miss the facts that they find inconvenient that paint a much different picture about what might have been occurring there. It's all fluff. It's all fluffy bullshit. And the way he's just like droning it out during this cacophony, during this conversational traffic jam, he's like, the problem with October 7th is this. Egypt didn't find it necessary. And it's been a more or less active conflict since the 1920s. It's funny because I don't know, at this point, like, he's placed them logically to where I can understand where he's put each person's words, like, you know, on the screen. But it's also just obvious by how they're talking, how it's written. That's clearly Norm saying because there were no options left for those people. After October 7th, what options are left? And then he says, the only option is conflict. The only option is conflict. Oh, listen to this. This conflict, it originated in the 19th century. That's Rabbani, right? And I think Stephen is being mocking, saying the only option is conflict. Egypt didn't find it necessary. Egypt didn't find it necessary. This is Benny Morris, right? To negotiate peace with Palestinians. Egypt didn't find it necessary to negotiate. Jordan didn't find it necessary to negotiate peace. The Abraham Accords didn't include the Palestinians. Do you know about Chapter 5? To find all the international laws, sometimes I feel like a weird shift happens. Maybe I'm getting lost in who's exactly saying what. Sometimes I feel like this weird shift happens. He thinks a weird shift happens. What a stellar argument. I know you guys have all these stories and all this footage and all this literature, documentation, all this evidence, but sometimes I feel like this weird shift happens when you're considering the facts and staking your side in this. Sometimes I feel I got a good feeling. I get a feeling that a weird shift is happening. Oh, weird shift is happening. Yeah, a weird shift.
That's why October 7th happened. Because there were no options left for those people.
And now what options are left? Mentality for 60 years. The options sounds like the options come left. He just didn't necessarily. He just found it necessary to negotiate peace with Palestinians. Jordan just found it necessary to negotiate peace with Palestinians. On all international laws. Sometimes I feel like we switch topics where the Arab that presented to the entirely pragmatic people. Population say we live 55% of our land. Maybe either of the people that get fertilized or something. What the problem is with an ideological because the right is the that's the lead on point of use Thank you for listening to this conversation and this season of debate musicals. To support this channel, please check out the Patreon link in the description. And now let me leave you with some words from William Godwin. It is better to debate a question without settling it than to settle a question without debating it.
Thank you for watching. We hope to see you next time.
Chris Kerrigan. Bravo. Yep. Did it all. Did the music. Is he also playing the piano? I assume so. That's fantastic. Really, really, really good. Well, got some good stuff to look forward to then. Because that debate goes off the rails. We're going to have 4 people speaking at once. This is going to be a challenge. We're going to have to work up to it. Going to have to work up to the challenge. So, here's the boat. Again, I don't have any labels on these exact countries, but I could pull up a different map. All right. So this looks like where they are. What is this place? Let's get those labels. It takes a second. I don't see any obvious, like, single name for the island. Is it Crete? That's a mountain. It's a mountain. Anogia, Greece. Looks like a nice place. Kind of has an adobe house look. Reminds me of the Southwest USA. Ooh. Some nice stuff. What's it like near the beach? Matala is a village located 75 kilometers southwest of the Heraklion, Crete, Greece. Matala is part of the community of Pitsidia within the municipal unit of Timpaki Phaistos Municipality, Heraklion Regional Unit. Okay, I don't know anything about Greek fucking stuff. How any of that works. But it looks like they're not very close to that. They're kind of more in the middle here. Let's see what it's like in off the coast of Egypt here. You see any pictures? We got one little dot down here. Let's see what we can see. Okay, not much. I'm guessing that's the ocean over there. Is there any other street view around here? Here's a couple. Ooh, this is a pie. This is a pie up high. Ooh, look at that. It's a nice view. Are these? No, they couldn't be. I thought at first these were like man-made hills. It almost looked like stacked like stonework. But I don't believe so. I think that's natural erosion. So, where's that? Okay, that's here-ish. Wait, so is there ocean in the other direction that I couldn't see? Because, like, that's the bay. Is the ocean out that way? Or maybe this way? Is that water going... Is there another dot over here?